Well, what's interesting is it sounds like you spent a lot of your life looking in the rearview mirror, like looking over your shoulder, what's going to come after me, who's going to hit me, who's going to rear end me. And now what I hear you saying is you're looking through the windshield. You're looking forward and just charging the path
Yeah.
forward. What experiences in your life had you looking in the rearview mirror though? Because
Yeah, I
something
mean,
must have led to that.
for sure. Like, there was just, and I don't know, there was just things that, like, I thought that I grew up normal.
Mhm.
And, as I become an adult and as I've learned about like what life looks like now, like it just didn't happen like that. Like, my mom had me when she was 17. And thank God, like, my grandmother had a good job. And my mom was working at a gas station and at a financial place in Des Moines. So she would literally go work a 9 to 5, come back, and then work overnight at the gas station. So I spent a shit ton of time with my grandparents and or at my aunt and uncle's, and it was like I just kept bouncing around from place to place because my mom was just like she had to get things done. And then she got into a really bad relationship with her ex-husband now, and like got so bad that my relationship got so bad with my mom that I didn't want to be around this man, that I moved in with my grandparents. Like I told my mom I was 12 years old. I don't know, it's kind of cool you're here. Hey, how are you? 12? Yeah, I mean, I was 12, and I was like, I'm not going with you.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not, because he was traveling, government contractor. He was going to Tennessee. I was like, I'm not going. And because he was abusive, and I was trying to get away from that. So then I moved in with my grandparents, and then that, like, that was stressful on me as well at the same time, because like I'm living with my grandparents, and it was like, oh, like you're not my mom,
Yeah.
and it's like, then my grandfather was trying to help me do my homework, and I'm like, well, you're not my dad. I don't have a dad. Like I don't need a dad. And like I remember that like mentality. And then I finally made the decision 15 years old that I was going to move out there with them when they were now in Virginia. Moved out there, mentally and physically abusive. And then we moved back to Iowa, and that abuse kind of followed. The grandparents were following. Like my best times were with my grandparents, but it was so sporadic. Like, and we were just lucky that like, grandfather was a doctor, grandmother was working as a nurse. Like I don't even think that like we wouldn't even, there was so many times I think that like, they were forking over money to me, to my mom, to help us. And it just felt like you're always living in this, like, you're nervous, like, and I feel like all of that combination of that environment just kind of led me as an adult. Then you get into the military, and you don't know who's going to scream at you, yell at you, beat your ass at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And, so then it's like, now I'm 19, 20, 21 years old like that. And then, I got into this marriage very young. And, when I met my ex-wife, I think she was 18 or 19 and I was 21, 22. And it was like, we were so young, we just fought all the time, and that was normal. Like we loved each other, life was good, but like it was just fighting at all
Yeah.
times. And so then that kind of turned me into an adrenaline junkie. I raced go-karts growing up, and then I started racing like big, like professionally racing cars. Still with a full-time job. It wasn't my full-time job, but it was, I was racing with the big guys. And then I was chasing adrenaline, and then I think that that's kind of what led me into the running. But it was the running that flipped the switch from all of that to like, because I just had a podcast the other day where I said this, where I'm like, I spent so many years running, 2020, 21, 22, where I was running, 23, where I was running from everything.
Yeah.
And then now that I finally got to where I am, like now I'm running to everything. I'm running towards everything. So it was running that flipped it, but it was all of that that kind of allowed me to, that made me kind of, live in that chaos and toxicity. My environment outside of being at my grandparents, my environment was never good.
No, I heard a story about when you snuck out
Yes.
and then you got back through the window.
Yeah, gosh.
Tell
I
me
told
about
that on Judd's podcast. Yeah, that was the only podcast I'd ever talked about that on. So we lived in a double wide trailer in small town Iowa. And the biggest thing about my mom's ex-husband was like he was very like, it was always a contest, like who was the biggest man. And at that point, like I was becoming a man, and there was a lackluster of love between him and my mom cared about me, and there was that's what led to this. And I snuck out one night, and I golfed at the time. It's funny because I golfed in high school, and I propped the window up with like a 9-iron, and I snuck out the window. One of my friends drove over from like the town over. We went and like hung out with these girls, and I come back at 2 o'clock in the morning and I climb in my window. It's funny now. It
Yeah.
was just not funny in the moment.
No.
But it is so funny now because it just like I can't like my mind has tried to block that out, but like and I think that's why I kind of laugh it off to try to make it funny. But I climb in my window and as soon as I'm coming in, and I still remember like how my room was set up. My bed was like right here in high school or bed, like it wasn't like on a bed
Right.
frame, and he was like standing on my bed. I didn't see him because of the curtains, but as I walk in, he presses a gun right to the temple of my head, and I knew right away like I knew what it was, and I just stopped, and I just sat there because I don't. I mean, when that happens, you just don't really know what to do. And he was like, you're such a fucking piece of shit. Like and the quote was like where I remember is he goes, I could kill you right now, and I could tell them that someone was breaking in, or I could tell them that I thought someone was breaking in. And like that, this was very close to like the end of that relationship with them. Like it was all going south, and I truly thought in that moment I was like, yeah, this guy, this is the hinge. Like, this is him going, he's off the hinges. Like, this is it. I'm dead. And I think that was the only thing I can remember that was said. And then he just pulled it away and walked out of my room.
What did you do after that? Did you tell your mom? Did you go live with grandma and grandpa again?
I never told my mom that story. Did you even know that story? Yep. I didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
I didn't tell because I was nervous. I was nervous of the repercussions because like within that same time frame, I remember he bashed my mom. Like I watched him bash my mom's face off of the front of a car and knocked her tooth out. I watched him, and this is all like when it was just blowing up. I watched him drag her to her bedroom by her hair and like lock the door. And I didn't know what was going on. And and then in that same time frame, like my mom OD'd on pills because she was just trying to do anything she could to not live in that environment. And then she was taken away for 2 to 3 days and was in a hospital. And, I was never mad at her for that because I knew, at that age for myself, I was like, she didn't want to be here.
Yeah.
And like you can't rationalize, oh, my kids are here and, like, what the fuck, what are you going to do? And, I found her literally in the kitchen and face down. And, this was all like once that we came back, like I left Arkansas, went to Virginia. Once we came back from Virginia and her ex-husband got back to Iowa, like shit just started getting very bad because he was back in like the environment. And I don't really know the backstory, but I think that from what I've gathered, like he was kind of involved in some drug use before we left. And then when we got back, I think he got back into it because now he is completely strung out. Like he is, the last we know, he was all methed out and he was a massive guy, like 6'4", 300 pounds, like kind of chubby. And now like I saw him at some point after, like years later, I saw him like in this town and he was skinny.
Wow.
And, like just didn't look like himself at all and was like talking to me through the, like life was good and talking to me through my car window. And I remember like calling my mom, I was crying and I'm like, what is going on? I'm like 19 at that point. And so I think that, there was just, he was cheating on my mom and it was, that's what led me to the military because then we get into this, then my mom, he leaves and, within the next couple of years, I think I was 16 when that actually happened, and 17 to 18, then my mom kind of starts dating again, and she was, very troubled now that I'm looking back at 30, and just dating the wrong people, and like shit was just like she dated this dude who was stealing pills out of her pill container, and he was getting all twacked out on pills, and this other guy who had. This was crazy. Had just got out of prison and she was dating him. And then he I was always like her safety net. And then I had a really bad relationship with her because like she would date these guys and then like she would get in these bad situations and she would call me and be like, oh, like help me.
Yeah.
And I remember a time where she was dating this guy and like he was off the rails and like locked her in the car and like was like driving her out on like back roads, and she's texting me and she's like, I don't know if he's gonna kill me or like, because she had trauma,
Yeah.
you know, and then of course I had so then I had all this trauma,
Yeah.
and you know, so that's like still shit today that I fucking have to work through with, you know, everything in my life.